Picture this. A kid, bright-eyed and bursting with energy, is sitting in a silent classroom. They're fidgeting, squirming, desperate for an outlet for all that buzzing energy. The teacher, a tired soul with a stack of papers to grade, sees only a disruptive influence. "Sit still and pay attention," she snaps. The child, confused and deflated, tries to comply, but their brain, wired differently, simply won't cooperate. This, my friends, is the story of countless neurodivergent individuals forced to conform to a world not built for them. This isn't just about fidgety kids in classrooms. It's about the countless ways society, often unwittingly, tells anyone who deviates from the norm that they're broken. We live in a world obsessed with labels, with neatly categorizing human behavior into normal and abnormal. And if you fall into the latter category, well, you're often met with suspicion, misunderstanding, or worse. This relentless pressure to fit in, to conform to a rigid standard that makes little sense to them, can be incredibly damaging. It's like trying to shove a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't fit, it's frustrating, and it can leave you feeling like you're the problem. But the truth is, the problem isn't the peg, it's the damn hole. Now, you might think, well, isn't that what mental health professionals are for? To help those who are struggling? And you'd be right, in an ideal world. But the reality is far messier. The systems meant to support neurodivergent individuals are often the very ones perpetuating harm. How? Through rampant misdiagnosis and a systemic bias that disproportionately affects marginalized communities. Let's talk about misdiagnosis for a second. Imagine going to a doctor for a persistent cough, only to be diagnosed with a broken leg. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet, this is the reality for many neurodivergent individuals who are misdiagnosed with conditions they don't have. This is particularly true for women and people of color, who are often diagnosed with mood disorders like anxiety or depression when their symptoms actually stem from underlying neurodevelopmental differences like ADHD or autism. But why does this happen? Well, part of the problem is that many mental health professionals still operate from a limited understanding of neurodiversity. They're working with outdated tools and biases that prevent them from seeing the full picture. And when you're working with a flawed system, it's no surprise that the results are often flawed as well. Remember that kid in the classroom, the one who couldn't sit still? Now imagine that child is Black, or Latino, or from a low-income family. Suddenly their fidgeting isn't just seen as disruptive, it's seen as defiant, aggressive, even threatening. This is the insidious reality of systemic bias in diagnosis. Studies have shown that Black and brown children are significantly less likely to be diagnosed with autism than their white counterparts, even when they exhibit the same symptoms. Instead, they're more likely to be labeled as having conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder, labels that can have serious and long-lasting consequences. These biases aren't just limited to race and ethnicity. Girls, too, are often overlooked and underdiagnosed when it comes to neurodevelopmental conditions. Why? Because the traditional diagnostic criteria for conditions like ADHD were largely based on studies of boys, leading to a narrow and often inaccurate understanding of how these conditions present in girls. The result? Countless individuals, already facing systemic barriers, are further marginalized by a system that's supposed to be helping them. It's a vicious cycle that perpetuates inequality and denies individuals the support they desperately need. But let's be honest, this isn't just about flawed systems or biased individuals. This is about a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be human. We've created this artificial construct of normal, this mythical standard that everyone is expected to adhere to. And if you deviate from this norm, if you think differently, learn differently, or interact with the world differently, well, you're quickly labeled as other, as less than. This obsession with normalcy is not only deeply unfair, it's also incredibly boring. Think about the most innovative, the most creative, the most interesting people you know. Chances are they don't exactly fit the mold. They think outside the box, they challenge the status quo. They make us see the world in new and exciting ways. These are the people who push society forward, who drive progress and innovation. So why are we so afraid of difference? Why do we try to force everyone into the same narrow box? It's time to ditch this outdated notion of normal and embrace the beautiful tapestry of human neurodiversity. Section 5, Education, Stifling Creativity, Enforcing Conformity. And where does this obsession with conformity begin? You guessed it, school. The very institution tasked with nurturing young minds often ends up stifling creativity and enforcing a rigid, one-size-fits-all approach to learning. We line kids up in neat rows, make them sit still for hours on end, and bombard them with information that may or may not be relevant to their lives. Now, I'm not saying all schools are bad, but the traditional model of education, with its emphasis on rote memorization and standardized testing, does a disservice to all students, especially those who learn differently. Imagine a child who's a brilliant artist, a gifted musician, or a budding engineer, forced to spend their days memorizing historical dates or struggling through a standardized math test. Is it any wonder that so many kids disengage from learning, feeling like failures because they don't fit the mold? We need to rethink our entire approach to education, to create a system that celebrates different learning styles, that nurtures creativity and curiosity, and that empowers all students to reach their full potential. We need to move away from a system that prioritizes compliance and conformity and towards one that values individuality and innovation. Section 6. The DSM, a flawed manual for the mind. Now let's talk about the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This hefty tome is basically the Bible of mental health, used by clinicians around the world to diagnose and treat mental illness. It's also a source of considerable controversy, with critics arguing that it pathologizes normal human experiences and relies on outdated and often harmful categories. One of the biggest criticisms of the DSM is that it's based on a medical model of mental health, viewing mental distress as a disease or illness rather than a natural human response to difficult circumstances. This approach can be helpful for some conditions, but it also risks oversimplifying complex experiences and pathologizing normal human emotions like sadness, grief, or anxiety. Another issue is that the DSM is constantly being updated and revised, with new diagnoses being added and old ones being removed or redefined. This suggests that our understanding of mental health is constantly evolving, which is a good thing. However, it also raises questions about the validity and reliability of some diagnoses, particularly those that are based on subjective criteria or that have been heavily influenced by cultural biases. The DSM is a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be misused. We need to be critical of its limitations and ensure that it's being used responsibly and ethically to support, not stigmatize, individuals who are struggling. Section 7, Mindfulness for some, Marginalization for others. Now here's a delicious irony for you. Society loves to preach the virtues of mindfulness, of being present in the moment, of embracing your authentic self. Yet when neurodivergent individuals do just that, when they express their authentic selves in ways that don't fit the mold, they're often met with judgment, misunderstanding, and even hostility. It's like we're saying, sure, be mindful, but only if your mindfulness looks like ours. We celebrate neurotypical expressions of mindfulness, like yoga and meditation, while pathologizing neurodivergent expressions of the same, like stimming or intense focus on special interests. It's a classic example of double standards, of promoting inclusivity while simultaneously marginalizing those who don't fit the dominant narrative. We can't preach mindfulness and acceptance while simultaneously rejecting those who embody these qualities in ways that we find uncomfortable or unfamiliar. True inclusivity means embracing all forms of mindfulness, all ways of being present in the world, even those that challenge our preconceived notions of what's normal. Section 8. Embracing Neurodiversity, a Call for Change. So, where do we go from here? How do we fix a system that's so fundamentally flawed? Well, it starts with a shift in perspective. We need to stop viewing neurodiversity as a problem to be solved, a deficit to be corrected. Instead, we need to recognize it for what it is, a natural and valuable part of human variation. This means challenging our own biases, educating ourselves about neurodiversity, and advocating for a more inclusive and equitable society. We need to listen to neurodivergent voices, amplify their experiences, and work together to create a world that celebrates their unique strengths and perspectives. This isn't just about making life better for neurodivergent individuals, although that's certainly a worthy goal. This is about creating a richer, more vibrant, and more innovative society for everyone. When we embrace neurodiversity, we unlock the full potential of humanity. Section 9. A future where different equals valid. Imagine a world where children are no longer forced to conform to a rigid and outdated educational model, where their unique learning styles are celebrated and their creativity is nurtured. Imagine a world where mental health professionals approach neurodiversity with understanding and compassion, where diagnoses are accurate and empowering, and where treatment focuses on supporting individual strengths rather than trying to fix them. Imagine a world where workplaces value neurodiversity, recognizing that different minds bring different skills and perspectives to the table. Imagine a world where neurodivergent individuals are no longer marginalized or misunderstood, but celebrated for their unique contributions to society. This might sound like a utopian dream, but it doesn't have to be. By challenging our biases, embracing difference, and working together to create a more inclusive and equitable society, we can make this vision a reality. The future of humanity depends on it.